I replayed Origami King for when we hit 250 subscribers, and I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad I also played the game again, because I'm not gonna lie, this game is way more fun on a replay than it is your first time. And the main reason is because the worlds are just as good as they were when you first play it. And that's why it was a really hard time ranking all these, but I got a ranking together. All 7 of these worlds are gonna be ranked, and you may be confused, wait, 7? Oh, I'm going to be counting the prologue, because I might as well. I actually do enjoy the prologue, so it will actually add something to the whole game. So because of that, I am actually including it. And obviously there's going to be spoilers, this is my opinion, and I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before summer break starts. It's a ridiculous goal, I know, but I want to try to hit it. So if you know a friend that's into the Mario RPGs, or you're not subscribed yourself, please subscribe, I really appreciate it. But other than that, let's get started. I said that the prologue does add stuff to the game, and don't get me wrong, it does, but it's still a prologue. It still is very bare bones compared to every other world in the game. That doesn't mean it's bad, I actually enjoy it quite a bit, and it does do pretty well for being a prologue. It's supposed to teach you how to actually play the game, and it works in that regard. I think it teaches you the right abilities, and it teaches you how to do the battle system pretty well, even though I do think it holds your hand for a bit too long, but I'll let it slide. The other thing is that I do like the concept of the trees being alive. It's that little concept in the prologue that works, kind of like Rogueport being a little bit more dark than normal. You don't want something too complex for the prologue, because it's the first thing that you're going to be experiencing in the game. But I will say that Peach's castle, the first time you visit, is pretty creepy, and it works really well atmospherically. And I also like when you go into Toad Town. All the macho enemies are just destroying Toad Town, having to destroy all of them, and rescue the Toads. I actually think it works pretty well. And when you destroy all of them, you actually get normal Toad Town music, which is pretty nice. But at the end of the day, it's still the prologue, so there's not going to be too many interesting things about it. Obviously, there's no bosses, there's no volumental temples. So at the end of the day, it's good, and it works, but it's just not that interesting. This World 1 is actually pretty decent, but compared to other worlds in Origami King, it's just okay. Obviously, kind of like the prologue, it's just not that interesting, but it was forced to be that way. Just like the prologue. It's the exact same formula with every single Paper Mario game. It's a plains area, and then it's a castle/tower. But I will say, because it's a tower, it does feel a bit more unique, and I actually think it fits better than just a random castle, because an observation tower being on a mountain works pretty well, and I do like that the origami infiltrated it in a very weird and disturbing way. I actually enjoy that quite a bit. I think the atmosphere really works for the observation tower. But the other thing that I actually like is the Earth Volumental Temple. Well, not the temple itself. It's fine. It's not bad, but overall, it's just generic, kind of like every other Volumental Temple. But how you actually get into it is pretty enjoyable. Getting all the turtle shells works pretty well. You have to get it from an auction, you have to fish it up, you have to get it from a dead Koopa Troopa, or my bad, a Dry Bones. And because of that, I think that the entrance works pretty well. And I do think that saving toads in this area is pretty good as well. But again, just like the prologue, it's not that interesting. It's very bare bones. And because of this, it has to be at number 6. It's weird that you go from World 1 in the prologue on this list all the way to World 6, but I have my reasons, and all I'm going to say first is that my favorite part of World 6 isn't anything that has to do with Origami Castle. It all has to do with Hotfoot Crater. When you land in, the airship is sinking, and you have to try to escape the volcano, but Bowser is all the way up there, but you have to reach him, and all these macho Goombas come and try to chase you. It's really threatening and scary. Both Kamek and Bowser Jr. stall the time so you and Bowser can actually launch yourself to Peach's castle. And it's really cool, and I really like the atmosphere and gameplay here. It works really well, and it's pretty scary. But then you get to Peach's castle, and don't get me wrong, the Luigi segment is funny, and when you get into Peach's castle, that huge cutscene from it going from Princess Peach's castle to Origami Castle is really cool to look at, but because of that cutscene, I got really high expectations for this place, and they flopped. Now don't get me wrong, it's an enjoyable place, it has good puzzles, but there's not much unique gameplay here, like for other worlds I'm going to talk about higher up on this list. It's just more of what you've seen, which just makes it kind of forgettable, and it's really disappointing because my favorite chapter from Super Paper Mario is Chapter 8, the huge castle at the end of the game, and I thought that Origami King would have that same feeling, but no, it doesn't, and that's why it's underwhelming. I do like World 6, don't get me wrong, but compared to all the other worlds, it should have been a lot better. World 3 puts an emphasis on story and atmosphere out of every world in the game, and I think that's probably why it's at number 4, but I will digress and say that it does these two features really well. And I'm gonna say, everything before the Scorching Desert is phenomenal. If you haven't played the game yet, I'm not gonna say it, but you have, then you know. You know exactly why I say that that part of this game is just perfection. Story-wise and atmospheric-wise, it's amazing. But once you get to the Scorching Desert, it's very open, but you have a boot cart that makes you go faster. And that may sound like a little game that I'd like to call Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, with these very open areas, and I complained about them a lot. Why is it different here? It's because the developers made this place open on purpose, and they made the atmosphere and the music fit it being open. And also the boot car is pretty fast. And I also like the controls of moving around in the boot car. And I think it's just more enjoyable overall. And I think it works in that regard. Also, the place is huge! It's huge! But there's those tiny things that actually make it better. Not like item blocks with stuff like cactuses and enemies. And in that regard, I think it works. But I will say that my two biggest complaints are the Temple of Shrooms and the gems. I'll talk about the gems first, because the gems are the first thing that you have to deal with once you actually get to the Scorching Desert, not counting the Fire Volumental Temple. Here's the thing about the gems. They work on your first playthrough. Once you know exactly where all 4 gems are, then there's no point, because you know exactly where they are, which means it just ruins the puzzle element of this place, which makes this place very unreplayable, which is very bad. And we also have the Temple of Shrooms, which, for a final area for a world, is just probably the worst. It just is generic. There's nothing to it. It's just an Egypt temple. And yes, I do like the faceless toads. I think that works. But other than that, the only thing I actually remembered was holding up the radio with the disc. And that's it. That's the only thing I remember from the Temple of Shrooms. I guess I do like that it's a bit unmemorable, so I will have a unique experience every single time. But it's just unmemorable in a bad way. It's just, oh yeah, that place actually exists. I didn't even remember that the Hole Puncher was the boss of this world. That's how memorable this place is. But I will say that something that does redeem it is Sniff City, which is one of my favorite locations in all of Origami King. I love the lights, I love the music, I love the atmosphere, I love the hotel, I love the attractions, I love Professor Toad. I think that that city works amazingly. And that's probably why it's at number 4. That's why it's as high as it is. But the Temple of Shrooms, the puzzle element here, it's just not as good, and that's why it's only at number 4, instead of it being in the top 3. Kind of like World 3, World 2 focuses on only one thing, and that one thing is the music. And let me tell you, World 2 excels in this category. I love the music in World 2. Autumn Mountain Shogun Studios, that's all I have to mention. Obviously there's more amazing pieces in this place, but it doesn't matter. World 2 has amazing music, and easily the best thing about World 2. But we also have the Water Volumental Temple, which is actually pretty enjoyable. It's better than Earth Volumental Temple and the Fire Volumental Temple, probably because of the atmosphere and the music, who would have guessed. But once you get to Shogun Studios, it gets even better. You actually have to fight against macho enemies again. You have the really cool trading sequence, which is actually a really big highlight for me. And we also have the House of Tricky Ninjas, which is also a highlight for me in the game. I really enjoy Shogun Studios, but it ends. The enjoyment, it doesn't end, but it just gets died down a bit once you get to the final area of World 2. And it's just the really tall tower, I can't really think of the name, I'm sorry about that, but the really high tower for Shogun Studios. It's a play, and you get to participate in it. And it's not bad, it's definitely unique, but it's just not as good as Shogun Studios or Autumn Mountain actually was. So because of this, I have to put World 2 at number 3. And don't get me wrong, I love World 2, and obviously I love the top 2 and even World 3, but it has to go somewhere. So because of that, World 2 goes at number 3. World 4 is the watered-down version of The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and let me tell you, I really enjoyed the Wind Waker, but just like the Wind Waker, World 4 follows the exact same flaw, and I'm going to talk about the flaw right now, because the rest of World 4 has so many positives. The reason why World 4 is not at number 1 is that the replayability is just not as good once you play it a second time, because you know exactly where every single island is going to be, just like in the Wind Waker. Now, it's definitely harder for the Wind Waker for this to happen, because there's 49 islands, but here, there's only a bit more than 10. So because of that, it just isn't as replayable as the number 1. But I will say that other than that, the Sea Tower, the Great Sea Tower, the final area for World 4 is super enjoyable. You're basically doing every single Volumental Temple, but having the great parts from each one, which makes it amazing. It's the best parts about each Volumental Temple, so you don't have to deal with the boring stuff. You just get all the great things, which makes the Great Sea Tower very enjoyable. But to actually get to that, you have to go to Diamond Island to get the Ice Volumental Temple, which is my favorite Volumental Temple out of the 4, and actually do all 3 trials. I will say that I don't like the Trial of Courage, because I'm a coward and I kept stopping it too early, but I will say that the other 2 trials were definitely more enjoyable. And just in general, I really like the Great Sea. Obviously, it's not as replayable, but still trying to find every single island is still enjoyable to an extent. I really enjoy World 4, and I just wish that there was more islands, and it probably would have been number 1 because the replayability would have been higher, but it just isn't. World 5 feels very different. It feels very different from any world in the game, for a couple reasons, but the main reason I love World 5 is because the gameplay in this place is at its best. 1, you have Kamek and Bowser Jr. This doesn't even relate to gameplay, I don't know why I said that, but you have Bowser Jr. and Kamek. Obviously, teaming up with them is great because they just make funny comments, just banter with each other, which is really funny to do. And I also just enjoy Bowser Jr. trying to get resurrected because obviously the scissors cut him up trying to actually go into Bowser's castle. I think it worked really well. Also, I think all the spas slash hot tubs are really enjoyable to try to find, especially the forest one. I will say that probably my biggest complaint with the place is that if you don't know that you need to pick Kamek, you just get a game over without really knowing that you did something wrong, which is annoying because how are you just supposed to know it's Kamek? But because I replayed the game, I knew that was Kamek, which means in my opinion, World 5 has no flaws. I'm not kidding. 0 flaws. All this place is really enjoyable. But once you get into Bowser's castle, it's just phenomenal. I love it so much. The first thing that happens is that all the minions just rush into it because Kamek called them to try to fight all the folded minions off. I love the music. It works so well. It fits. This is exactly what I wanted from this fight. Right when it went into Bowser's castles, all the enemies just came in and fighted all the folded enemies. That is exactly what I wanted, and it works so perfectly. But after you're done with that quote-unquote fight, you realize the door is locked, so you go into Kamek's quarters to get Bowser's key. And Kamek and Olivia get captured. They're gone. Everyone's gone. And it's because of all the enemies that are basically stick figures, and they captured everybody. And then there's this really unmemorable boss, but it is actually pretty good, where you basically play rock, paper, scissors to save Olivia. And I think it works pretty well. It's not amazing, but it's definitely good. So because of this, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. But then you go into the scissors room where you have the macho Buzzy Beetle fight. Well, I guess the one that's powered up by Kamek, accidentally. And it works really well. I think it's really enjoyable. It's better than a normal macho Buzzy Beetle. So because of this, I really enjoy that fight. And I just enjoy World 5 so much. It's so epic. It has great music. I love the level design. I love the gameplay. I love World 5. It's probably one of my favorite worlds slash chapters from any Paper Mario game. thank you guys for watching this video. My next video will also be on Origami King, probably. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Obviously, I am still trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of summer break. No, before it starts. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Again, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video.